Next up, we have Chief Payne. Mr. Payne has dedicated his life for over 30 years to the City of Grand Rapids Police Force, eventually working his way up to Chief of Police. This is so neat to hear. I learned that the importance of Mr. Payne's job is he's the head of police and works with the community. We are so grateful to have you, Chief Payne. Thank you so much for your time and effort serving our country. Well, community.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I apologize to everyone. I had something come up today that I couldn't I had to attend to. But thank you for having me. I wish I could have spent more time with you today and been part of this program and to listen. That's one of the things I'm looking to do. As I mentioned, one of my primary duties as police chief is interaction with the community. When I was appointed, one of the things I mentioned to people, I have been a police officer for over 30 years. That allows me to have an insight in law enforcement. I've seen many changes. I think there's many changes that we need to focus on, and moving forward, there's more that we can do. We should never stop trying to improve ourselves in law enforcement. But I've been a black man for over 50 years. That's a lot more experience. So I have knowledge of both worlds. I know what it is to be an African American growing up in America. I know the struggles that could present, but it should never stop anyone. We have to continue to do our best. But no doubt there are things in place that has been issues for people to be able to, people of color, whether they're black or brown. Those are things that have to be broken down. My hopes as my time as chief is that I attempt to bridge that gap. And I think that you do that by building relationships that eventually lead to trust. It's not as simple as can be done overnight, but it's something that needs to be done. So that's my biggest commitment, is bridging that gap between people of color and law enforcement, so that better relationships can build. And I apologize to Marquise because I took your time and your questions, but sorry about that. Is there a few questions I may be able to answer real quickly?
Ayana, did you have a question for him? I know you wanted to know, I think you had wanted to know why he chose to be, what was your question in terms of why for him as a young woman?
Yeah.
Why did you want to work yourself all the way up to earn your responsibility as chief of police?
I ask myself that every day. No, that's a great question. It's because, well, as I mentioned, I do care about the department, but I also care about the community. I built some great relationships over the years, some that go back almost 30 years, of people out in the community. I think we have a good community, but I also believe we have work to do. Not everything is the way it should be. And I took this responsibility and I didn't take it lightly, but I want to build a better community with police working together with the community and community working with police. We have to build mutual respect and mutual trust. So that's the real reason I wanted to become police chief.
That's awesome. And Mr. Payne, we are very grateful for what you do, and obviously we know it can't be an easy job. What would you say to the people right now who are angry? You know, I had saw, it was on Facebook Live the other day, and, you know, people were walking in the streets and yelling in police, you know, in the faces of police officers and in community officers. What are things that we as a community can do to come together to make solutions rather than, you know, continue to put people in jail and, you know, yeah, just what do you think we can do to bring down the anger? And what are things that you're doing in the police force?
Well, I look at it, it's about trust, and there's a huge trust problem right now. We need to break down those barriers where we're building those relationships. I get it. I understand. I hear the people. I've heard people loud and clear. Um, I've met with people. It's time for action. If I'll be reporting out on August 11th the measures that we've taken to clarify within the Grand Rapids Police Department what we do, what we don't do, and but many of them have already been implemented. So we have the 8 can't wait that's out there, banning chokeholds. We've never taught chokeholds here, but I'm going to put it in the policy so it's explicitly said in our policy. So those are type things we're looking to do.
Okay, great. Caleb is a defense attorney in the city of Kalamazoo. He had a question for you. He's one of our speakers today.
Good morning, Chief. Something I spoke a little bit about earlier was building trust in the community with the police departments. And something I think is a big problem there is the whole blue shield culture, you know, officers not ever telling another officers are doing wrong or wanting to, you know, have to do that. What is it that you're doing or plan on doing in the future to help that process? And I'm glad you talked about trust, because without, you know, I think the community seeing officers saying, yes, that person's wrong, I don't want him a part of my police department. What are you doing to kind of change that culture to make officers feel comfortable in pointing out bad officers that need to be removed?
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. We've had we have what's called internal affairs. They're the ones who investigate our officers when there's misconduct. One of the things we had was 21st century policing policy and review team come in. It was a group that was formerly with the COPS office in Washington, D.C. under President Obama. And we asked them to look at our process on how we intake information, complaints and different things. And they said we had one of the most progressive internal affairs unit in the country. With that said, they also mentioned that our internal complaints that we generate internally, not by citizens, is far exceed anything they've seen in the country. That is officers turning in other officers, or the department holding officers accountable for their actions without citizens' complaint. That's the culture that has to be built in every police department. Every police department employee across the country has to know that if you're doing something wrong, you have to report it. The duty to intervene, we've had that part of our policy. We're going to make it more strong, not strong, but more pronounced in a different portion of our policy. You have to build that culture within your police department to know that not only if you don't report wrongdoing, if you don't report wrongdoing, you're going to be held accountable for it. And is it 100%? Absolutely not. But the message has to be, I will hold you accountable, and I will in the Grand Rapids Police Department if you're part of any part of misconduct in this department, and if you don't report it, if you knowingly don't do it.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Payne. We have questions are flooding in, but what I would like to do is just have maybe if any of the panelists had specific questions, and then maybe we can try to summarize a couple, because I know you do have another press conference you have to be on. Marquise, what was your question?
Yeah, Chief, how you doing? My
Good.
question was around what are your department doing to create a bridge between, once again, the community and the police? Because I think there's a narrative that the police is only there to police the community. They're not there to interact. They're not there to engage. They're not there to, you know, to hear the people that they're supposed to be protecting.
One of the things that we're looking to do is have a person that's our public information officer, because we are doing those things through our community engagement unit. We have over 50, we call them recruiters, but they're the people who that I task with going out and engaging. For instance, The other day, there was a unity basketball event at Martin Luther King Park. We had 6 or 7 officers down there, not in an enforcement capacity, but just interacting with people down there, the participants, spectators. We do those events. I think we did over 200 last year, and we'll continue to do that. You're exactly right, though, but that's how we get that trust. What we're looking to do is getting officers out of their cruisers and walking, bicycling out in the neighborhoods and building those relationships within it. It gets difficult because of staffing for us to be able to do that, but we have to find time for them to be able to go out and interact with the community. And it starts as simple as that, a conversation.
I keep muting myself and then forgetting to unmute myself. Do you have time for 2 more questions, or do you have
2 more? Yes,
Okay.
sure.
What do you say to people? Well, this could be a double-ended question. So the first part would be, have you personally had any experiences like in terms of racism from other police officers, and how have you responded? And then what do you just say to a person that sees you as blue before they see you as black?
Yeah, I'll take the first one first. As I mentioned, I'm an African American all my life and proud of it. And I waved that flag and put that out there. I would never want to change that. So for someone to see me as blue, I am proud of also my career in law enforcement. But with that said, that's bridging that gap. I am both those people. As far as racism, I've never tolerated it if it occurs. Very early on in my career, I think I set the tone of what I was about, and people know that that is not an area. But that creates problems also. Have we had officers with race issues in our department over the years? Absolutely. But what I do know is when it surfaced, we've gotten rid of them. They've been terminated. And that's my commitment to the community. It will not be tolerated, and under my watch, and it never has. I think I built a pretty strong reputation on my feelings of that. And it's not just race, it's gender, it's everything. So when we talk about being equal, we got to start at a place of equity, because being equal is not equity, or there's not equity built into it. Several of when I first started, I'm getting long-winded here, but when I first started, there was only one person that was considered minority in the police department that was a supervisor. There were a number of people who sued the city in a lawsuit over that because no one was getting promoted. And those brave people won that lawsuit. And that's why I'm sitting in probably the seat I am now, because something had to be done about that. That's one example of where I believe racism did play into the department promotional system at the time. That has obviously changed. So it's when those type things come up, we have to address them. We have to talk about them. And if it requires a lawsuit, as those officers needed to do, that has to be done also.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chief Payne. We definitely are honored to have you here and appreciate your time today. Again, grateful for what you do for our community and your service and all you're doing. So thanks again. I don't know if you have any closing remarks or any calls to action, but we, again, appreciate you being here.
No, I appreciate it. These are important topics we need to talk about and discuss, and maybe in the future, I can do this again and be able to participate through the entire part of it. And so my apologies to you and your visitors and the other panelists on not being able to participate more fully today, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to at least touch base and answer a few questions.
Thank you. Ayana, did you want to introduce Ata